23rd February 2023, the lives of Elena Suarez and her daughter Luna Suarez took a dark, irreversible turn when their twisted love triangle ended in a deadly betrayal that shocked the entire city. Elena Suarez, a 46-year-old widow, had spent most of her life in a quiet, conservative neighborhood in Miami. After losing her husband in a tragic accident, she devoted herself entirely to raising her daughter, Luna Suarez, who was now 24 years old. Their life had always been simple. Elena had worked as a receptionist at a local clinic, while Luna attended a nearby community college. But everything changed when Luna's social media presence exploded. Luna had started posting beauty and fashion content on Instagram during her college days, and it didn't take long for her vibrant personality and stunning looks to catch fire. With her long, glossy brown hair, flawless skin, and a keen sense of style, Luna quickly became a rising star. Within 2 years, she had amassed over 500,000 followers on Instagram, turning her into a minor celebrity. Brands began reaching out for collaborations, and invitations to exclusive parties and influencer events started pouring in. But as Luna's star rose, so did the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Elena found herself swept into this new world alongside her daughter. Despite being older and more reserved, Elena's natural beauty and graceful demeanor caught the attention of many at these events. She was often mistaken for Luna's sister rather than her mother, a notion that flattered and embarrassed her in equal measure. But Elena, too, was changing. The excitement of this glamorous lifestyle was intoxicating, pulling her further from the quiet, predictable life she had known. It was at one of these high-profile events, a glitzy charity gala held in a luxurious Miami beachfront mansion, that their lives would take a fateful turn. Among the glittering guests was Daniel Vega, a 28-year-old entrepreneur who had made his in the tech industry. Daniel was tall with dark, wavy hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. He had an aura of mystery and danger that made him irresistible to the women who crossed his path. When Daniel entered the room, conversations paused and heads turned. He exuded a magnetic presence that drew people to him, especially Luna. Daniel had noticed Luna almost immediately. Her energy was infectious, and her beauty was undeniable. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught his eye, it was her popularity. To someone like Daniel, Luna's 500,000 followers represented influence, power, and opportunity. He introduced himself with a charming smile, and Luna, flattered by the attention of such a successful man, was instantly drawn to him. They spent most of the night talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. But as the night wore on, Daniel found himself intrigued by another presence, Elena. Unlike the young, lively influencers that filled the room, Elena had an air of maturity and grace that was hard to ignore. She was quieter, more reserved. Yet there was something about her that couldn't resist. When he approached Elena later in the evening, she was initially surprised but quickly charmed by his attentiveness and smooth-talking ways. And so began a dangerous game, where the stakes were far higher than anyone could have imagined. By the end of the evening, Daniel had exchanged numbers with both women, neither aware that the other had also caught his interest. What began as a simple flirtation soon spiraled into something far more sinister. Daniel, a man used to getting what he wanted, saw an opportunity to play both sides, and he relished the challenge. As weeks went by, Daniel's relationship with Luna blossomed. He courted her openly, taking her to high-end restaurants, exclusive parties, and even on a weekend getaway to the Bahamas. Luna, who had never experienced such luxury, was completely smitten. She began to fall for Daniel, believing that he was the perfect partner, successful, charming, and attentive. Daniel played his part well, showering her with gifts and compliments, all the while knowing that he had another woman in his sights. But what Luna didn't know was that her mother was also being drawn into Daniel's web. Elena, on the other hand, was living a double life. By day, she was the devoted mother, helping Luna navigate her new life as a social media star. By night, she was meeting Daniel in secret, indulging in a passion she hadn't felt in years. Their affair was intense, driven by the forbidden nature of their relationship. Daniel introduced Elena to new experiences, both emotionally and physically, pushing her boundaries in ways she had never imagined. The excitement of the affair left Elena feeling alive again, but also deeply conflicted. She knew it was wrong, not just because of her daughter, but because Daniel was so much younger than her. Yet she couldn't resist him. The thrill of being desired, especially by a man as magnetic as Daniel, was too powerful to ignore. She convinced herself that it was just a fling, something that would pass with time. Bold rehook. But the truth was, they were both in far deeper than they could have ever anticipated. As the affair continued, the cracks in the mother-daughter relationship began to show. Luna noticed changes in her mother, late-night outings, a sudden interest in fashion and makeup, and a newfound confidence. What she didn't know was that these changes were the result of Elena's clandestine meetings with Daniel. He had encouraged Elena to embrace her sexuality, to let go of her inhibitions, and this newfound freedom made her feel both empowered and guilty. Meanwhile, Daniel was feeding Luna similar lines, leading her to believe that she was the only woman in his life. He maintained the facade of a caring, romantic partner, fueling her growing infatuation. Luna, blinded by love, couldn't see the manipulation at play. She began confiding in Elena about her feelings for Daniel, describing their passionate nights and his dark, alluring side. Each revelation sent a dagger through Elena's heart, but she couldn't bring herself to confess the truth to her daughter. The tension was building, and it was only a matter of time before everything exploded. The situation became even more twisted when Daniel started to pit the two women against each other subtly. He would cancel plans with Luna at the last minute, only to meet Elena, or he would disappear for days, leaving both women desperate for his attention. The manipulation was deliberate, calculated to keep them both on edge, always wondering where they stood with him. The tension reached a boiling point when Luna found a piece of jewelry in Daniel's apartment that she knew wasn't hers. A delicate bracelet Elena had left behind after a particularly intense night. Suspicions arose, but Luna convinced herself it must belong to one of Daniel's exes. She didn't want to believe that her mother could be involved with the man she loved. But soon the truth would be impossible to ignore. Luna's suspicions were confirmed when she stumbled upon explicit messages on Elena's phone, exchanged between her mother and Daniel. The messages detailed their secret meetings, graphic descriptions of their sexual encounters, and even plans to meet while Luna was away. Enraged and devastated, Luna confronted Elena in a violent, tear-filled confrontation. The air was thick with accusations, as Luna screamed at Elena for betraying her, while Elena tried desperately to explain that she had fallen for Daniel before Luna even met him. But the damage was done, and Luna could never look at her mother the same way again. They both were feeling betrayed that Daniel had not only used them both, but had taken pleasure in degrading them. The realization that they had both been manipulated drove a wedge between them, but also an eerie solidarity formed as they both realized they had been played. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change their lives forever. In their rage, Luna suggested confronting Daniel together, but with a plan. They would lure him into a trap using his own twisted desires against him. Elena, now fully aware of how deeply they had both been wronged, agreed. They planned to meet Daniel in a remote location under the pretense of continuing their illicit affair. But the true intention was to confront him, expose his lies, and force him to choose between them, knowing full well that the confrontation would likely turn violent. The night of the confrontation arrived. Elena and Luna met Daniel at a secluded beach house, where they had often rendezvoused with him separately. The tension was palpable as they played along with his games, pretending that everything was normal. Daniel, unaware of their plan, was caught off guard when they both revealed that they knew about his double life. The confrontation quickly turned heated, with Daniel trying to manipulate his way out, using the same charm that had ensnared them both. But this time the women were prepared, and there would be no escape for Daniel. Luna, fueled by rage and betrayal, physically attacked Daniel, slapping him across the face and screaming about how he had ruined their lives. Daniel, shocked by the sudden aggression, fought back, shoving Luna away. Elena, seeing her daughter in danger, grabbed a nearby bottle of champagne and smashed it over Daniel's head, causing him to stumble and fall. The situation escalated quickly. Daniel, now bleeding and enraged, lunged at Elena, his hands around her throat, choking her with a strength she hadn't known he possessed. Luna, desperate to save her mother, grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter and plunged it into Daniel's side. The first stab didn't stop him, so she stabbed him again and again until Daniel was a bloodied, gasping mess on the floor. But the violence didn't end there. In a moment of pure, primal rage, Elena took the knife from Luna and slashed at Daniel's throat, silencing him forever. The beach house, once a place of illicit pleasure, was now a scene of brutal murder. Blood splattered across the walls and floor. The mother and daughter stood over Daniel's lifeless body, panting, their minds racing with the reality of what they had just done. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was the distant crash of waves against the shore. The gravity of their actions began to sink in. Elena and Luna looked at each other, their faces pale, eyes wide with shock. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. But they knew they couldn't stay there, not with the evidence of their crime lying in a pool of blood before them. Their lives had changed in an instant, and now they had to figure out how to cover their tracks. Elena quickly snapped into action. Her years of handling crises in her quiet life hadn't prepared her for this, but she knew they had to act fast. They cleaned up as best they could, wiping down surfaces, collecting any items that might tie them to the scene. They wrapped Daniel's body in a thick blanket, struggling to move his heavy, lifeless form. As they dragged him toward the back door, Luna felt sick to her stomach, but there was no turning back. They loaded Daniel's body into the trunk of Elena's car, a white Toyota Camry, and drove out to a secluded cliffside a few miles away. The night was dark, with only the sliver of a crescent moon to light their way. The air was thick with tension, every creak of the car's tires on the gravel road sending shivers down their spines. They were running on adrenaline, their minds numb to the horror of what they were doing. When they reached the cliff, Elena and Luna pulled the body out of the trunk. The wind howled around them as they stood on the edge, looking down at the churning waves below. Without a word, they pushed the body over the cliff, watching as it disappeared into the dark waters. The sound of the waves swallowing Daniel's body was almost deafening, a final, chilling punctuation to their crime. They believed that the ocean would keep their secret, that the darkness would hide their sin forever. But the ocean, as vast and mysterious as it was, couldn't wash away the guilt that clung to them. Elena and Luna returned home in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The drive back felt like a nightmare, the road stretching out endlessly before them. By the time they arrived, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale light over their haunted faces. They went through the motions of cleaning up, burning the bloodied clothes they had worn, scrubbing the inside of the car, erasing any traces of Daniel from their lives. They deleted all messages, photos, and videos that could link them to him, hoping to erase him from existence. But no matter how hard they tried, the memories lingered, a dark cloud hanging over them. They thought they had covered every detail, but the smallest cracks were beginning to show. As the days turned into weeks, Elena and Luna tried to resume their normal lives, but nothing felt the same. The weight of their secret bore down on them, turning every smile into a forced grimace, every laugh into a hollow echo. They were living in a state of constant fear, convinced that, at any moment, someone would discover what they had done. The first sign of trouble came when Luna received a text from an unknown number. The message was simple, just 3 words. "I see you." She showed it to Elena, her hands shaking. They both tried to dismiss it as a prank, but the paranoia began to take root. They started seeing shadows where there were none, hearing whispers in the silence of the night. Their once vibrant, lively home had become a place of dread and suspicion. Elena began hearing footsteps at night, heavy and slow, as if someone was walking down the hall outside her bedroom. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing, but when she opened the door, the hallway would be empty. Luna, too, was haunted by visions of Daniel's bloodied face, his dead eyes staring up at her from the floor. The guilt was driving them both to the brink of madness. The secrets they thought they had buried were beginning to claw their way to the surface. Their descent into paranoia made them reckless. Elena started making trips to places she hadn't been in years, visiting old friends who knew Daniel, asking too many questions, trying too hard to seem casual. Luna's behavior became erratic. She turned to alcohol and drugs, trying to numb the fear and guilt that gnawed at her. The tension between them grew, their once close bond strained to the breaking point. Then one morning, a package arrived at their door. It was wrapped in plain brown paper with no return address. Luna opened it with trembling hands, revealing a single Polaroid photograph. The image was slightly faded, but it was unmistakable. A picture of Luna and Daniel, taken at a party months before. The photo had been tucked into the pages of a book that neither of them recognized. A book with passages highlighted that described the relationship between a mother, daughter, and a shared lover. Panic set in. They had destroyed everything, or so they thought. How could this photo exist? Who had sent it? The paranoia that had been simmering beneath the surface now erupted into full-blown fear. Elena and Luna searched their home from top to bottom, looking for any other traces they might have missed, but found nothing. They tried to convince themselves that it was a prank, that someone had found an old photo and decided to mess with them. But deep down, they knew better. The walls were closing in, and they were running out of time. Desperation led them to make more mistakes. They sought out anyone who might know something, but in doing so, they left a trail of inquiries that aroused suspicion. Elena, once so careful and calculated, began visiting old friends who knew Daniel, asking too many questions, trying too hard to seem casual. Luna, in her panic, turned to alcohol and drugs to numb her fear, her behavior becoming increasingly erratic. The two women, once so close, now found themselves at each other's throats, blaming one another for the unraveling of their lives. Their breaking point came when they discovered that Daniel had been keeping his own secrets that would lead to their downfall. In the weeks before his death, Daniel had installed hidden cameras in the beach house. He had filmed their encounters, capturing every illicit act, every whispered confession. He had been preparing to blackmail them, using the footage as leverage to keep them under his control. Bold rehook. Daniel had always been one step ahead, even in death. The police, investigating Daniel's disappearance, stumbled upon these recordings while searching his apartment. They found the footage in a hidden safe, along with a meticulously kept journal where Daniel detailed his relationships with both Elena and Luna, his plans to extort them, and his sick enjoyment of their rivalry. The evidence was damning, linking the two women to Daniel in ways they had never anticipated. But it wasn't the police who initially connected the dots. It was a journalist, a true crime enthusiast who had been following Daniel's exploits for years. He had been working on a story about Daniel's shady business dealings and had stumbled upon the footage after bribing a corrupt detective. The journalist pieced together the timeline, connecting Elena and Luna to Daniel's disappearance. He published the story online, complete with screenshots from the videos, igniting a media firestorm. Bold rehook. Their darkest secret was now exposed for the world to see. The world now knew the sordid details of their affair, and the police had all the evidence they needed to bring them in. Elena and Luna were arrested in the early hours of the morning, their once perfect lives shattered beyond repair. The trial was a spectacle, with the footage played out in court for all to see. The mother and daughter who had fallen for the same man and killed him in a fit of jealousy and rage were convicted of murder. They received a sentence of 25 years each, their names forever tarnished by their connection to the dark, twisted life of Daniel Vega. Their downfall was not the result of sloppy police work or a careless mistake, but of a man who had planned his own revenge from beyond the grave. Daniel had always known that his time with them would end violently, and he had ensured that even in death, he would have the final word. And so, the story of Elena and Luna ended as it began, with a man who had the power to destroy them both.